So we get to start our October series here today. And I decided that I wanted to talk about where is God. So this month we're going to be talking about various kind of iterations of this from different vantage points. I often get the question, and even thinking about my own journey in unity, where is God in all of this? How do I understand God? What is my relationship to God? What is my connection to God? What is the purpose and the plan? Anybody been there? Anybody there now? Sometimes we forget some of the basics. Unity has a very different view, standpoint, and presencing of the Holy Spirit. And so I want us to kind of take a really kind of basic and yet profound deep dive this month into all of this. Today we're going to be talking about where is God in my pain. As a minister, I'm surrounded by people's pain constantly, doing pastoral care, doing pastoral counseling, hearing people's stories, praying with people. We had a faithful congregant of our Spanish service pass away this week, Miss Helen Jaro. She was here every Sunday, and though she was a devout Catholic, she was a curious woman. And she came, even though she received criticism from people at times and say, why are you going to that church? Or what is it even that you're going to? But there was something in her that called her here every month. And I had the blessing and the joy to be at her bedside in the hospital and to pray with her and to send her text prayers and all the various technology that we use now to support people. I also happen to be surrounded by death and pain because my wife sells funeral insurance. So every day there's conversations about death, there's people dying, but we're all going through some kind of transition, sometimes not at every moment in turn, but sometimes it feels that way. Some of us are going through divorces or other sorts of challenges like a health diagnosis. Maybe it's our finances, maybe it's our relationships. And I think it's really easy to ask sometimes, even if we've been in unity for a while, it's easy to say, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Why is God punishing me? That was always my grandmother's refrain whenever we would do something she didn't like. She was, God's gonna punish you. And that was always the fear. And even though we want to get away from that, sometimes there's a part of us that's so deeply programmed in us that maybe we actually do believe it, and it may surface at times. When I started my unity journey over 20-some years ago, y'all already know that I told y'all I was a hot mess. I was in a downward spiral due to the death of my grandmother, who was the love of my life and my rock, matriarch of our family. I couldn't find my way. She was the compass. And then a year after that, my relationship with my partner of 8 years, and we had adopted our daughter together 2 years before, we split. And it was a very painful and ugly split. And I was in a downward spiral. I was depressed. I was angry. I was sad. And in that moment, through a strange series of events, I found unity. The blessing of that was that not only did I find unity, but unity was so much involved in 12-step fellowship programs, and I started to go to various 12-step fellowships to be able to get additional support. And I think the most important thing that I learned was that I was not a victim. Unity teaches us that we have the power within to change our lives, that we are not beholden to outside forces, that we are not simply here waiting for something or someone to save us. The idea becomes, guess what? We save ourselves. And we join in fellowship and in a community with people who also support that process of renewal for us. But the hard part sometimes in the teachings of unity is that we got to do the work, y'all. That's the hard part, that someone outside of ourselves, this God that we're beholding to, or some other kind of something, teacher, healer, something, someone is out there to save us. It's about us doing the work. And I think what I learned on my journey too is that, okay, I'm going to give a disclaimer. Wait for it. Take a deep breath, y'all. Sunday service is not enough. We come to Sunday service and it may give us a little bit. It may get us through to the next week. It may make us feel good. But these teachings are mystical teachings, and they require us to go deeper and further. And that's why we encourage people to take classes or to join groups and things of this nature, because it's not enough just to come. I'm happy y'all are here. Don't get me wrong. But it requires us to do deeper work. If we don't do the work, you all, here's what happens. I've come across this phrase that I use all the time, and it's attributed to different people, and I just heard recently it's attributed to Father Richard Rohr, so I'm going to go with that today. But the phrase is, pain untransformed is pain transferred. Meaning that if you don't deal with your pain, if you don't do a deeper dive, you are going to be paining all over the place and engaging people in your pain. That it will come out in the most unexpected ways. It will come out in ways that are toxic. It will come out in ways that are not a service to yourself or others. And here's a funny thing, when we're in pain, we often think that we're alone. The image that we have for this talk is the boy or man that's sort of just in this moment, in this darkness, reflecting in aloneness. And we think that we're alone, but we're really not. And we think that we can hide our pain. We can smile and we can come somewhere to our work or to our school or to our job, and that we can just smile and we can make it go away. But oftentimes, people see our pain. Oftentimes, our pain walks in the room before we do. And we think nobody sees it, and yet everyone sees it. We have to face our pain. I know when I started Unity and I was starting to face my pain, I was fearful of it because I thought, if I open up this door, I may never come out of that darkness. If I fall to the floor in tears and in grief, I may never get up. We think this. That's the ego mind. That's the lack mind that is trying to tell us or make us believe that we can't bear it, but we can. I want to share with you all something. I came across this book. I was just at the Unity Urban Ministers of the Mid-Atlantic States retreat, and Reverend Teresa Donlin Lee did the closing ceremony. It was a beautiful ceremony, and she used this book. It's called The Invitation by a Canadian author, Oriah Mountain Dreamer. And it's an old book from like 1999, but she read some things from here that were so powerful. And my wife, Vero, went up to her afterwards and said, "What's that book?" And she says, "Here, you can have it," which I was really excited about because that meant I got it too, right? So I'm going to share with you something about what she says. She talks about needing to go into the pain, needing to trust the pain and the process of the pain, and needing to know that we are divinely supported and we have everything we need within us, that courage and that wisdom to come through. She says, what is the taste, the look, the sound that comes when you touch the center of your sorrow? We are afraid of pain, emotional and physical, and we are given a wound we are afraid of. We are afraid of pain, emotional and physical, and we want to believe that there is a way around experiencing our own sorrow, that we can avoid the pain and lose nothing of the fullness and joy of living, but it's simply not true. But I do breathe, allowing the sorrow of the world to break my heart open over and over, letting the joys make it whole again, knowing how to do this, finding the courage to take another breath and not lose my heart to myself or the world where there is pain. This is what I seek to learn, how to love well. If we are strong enough to be weak enough, we are given a wound that never heals. It is a gift that keeps the heart open. There's a lot in that, but that end part to me is some of the most interesting things that we need to sort of open up in this space, is that we think of our pain as, again, punishment. We think of our pain as something we have to grin and bear through. We think of our pain as something we want to quickly move through and forget. But what she's saying is our pain is really what makes us human. Our pain is what makes us be able to be a support for someone else. Our pain is able to become the testifier of God to what is happening in our life, about how Spirit showed up from within us, from around us, to be able to move us through this pain. She's reminding us that that wound may never heal, but it doesn't have to be your enemy. It can be the source of your strength. You know, we're not used to dealing with pain in our culture because we're a feel-good culture, right, y'all? Like, we want everything, you know, TikTok funny. That's why people peruse through TikTok for hours. Not me, of course, y'all. But that's what we do because it's fun and it's funny and it's light and we feel joy about the things that are happening in our lives, and we can anesthetize for a while, anesthetize ourselves to think that we are in joy, but we're really not. We use drugs, we use alcohol, we use toxic relationships, and what happens? We get even further from our joy. Our culture tells us, I remember when my grandmother passed away, it's sort of like get over and get on with it. Get over the grief and move on. We got to get through this quickly because I got to get to work. We got to get through this quickly because I got to deal with my toddler daughter. We got to get over it. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. And sometimes, even when we're in unity, we're told some things that are not helpful. Sometimes we're, let go and let God. I mean, that sounds great, and I'm not making light of it because sometimes that is what it is, but other times it's not helpful when we're in deep sorrow and pain. When we're in that ugly cry, y'all, who've been there, don't make me to be the only one. The ugly cry, when we're on the floor, when we can't get up, when we feel like darkness and the world is caving in on us and we don't know where to go or what to do. Sometimes those are not helpful. Or for someone to say, it's in divine order. What does that even mean when I just lost my child? We have to think about these things, and in unity, those of us who really are taking this seriously about how do we create a space for grieving and pain and sorrow and the shadow, we remind ourselves that, that is spiritual bypass, meaning we're trying to bypass all of the stuff to get to the good part. It's all good and it's all God. Again, true. But how true is it if in the inner corners of our mind, in our heart, at home when we're alone, those are just pithy phrases that make us feel better for a moment? In the Bible, we have kind of the quintessential story about this idea of where is God in the pain, with the story of Job in the Old Testament. Anybody remember that? Boy, Job went through it, didn't he, y'all? Those of you who don't know the story, I'm going to tell you really quickly. Job was thought to be this extremely pious man, upright man, lived his life, in service to God. He had wealth, he had riches, he had sons, he had children. He was living the dream. And then something happens when Satan kind of came in, and I won't give you all the details because this is a long book in the Bible, but sort of wanted to shake things up a little bit and tells God, you see your boy Job over there. Yeah, he seems like he's really with you, but I bet you if you challenged him, he'll turn on you. And so they went through these series of things where first he lost his wealth. And Job was like, all right, well, that's external. I still have my faith. And then he lost his family. He lost his sons. He lost his children. And then he was still okay. And so Satan says, you know what? All those things are external to him. He's okay and he's still holding steady. But let's see what he does when you actually do something to him, or when I do something to him, rather. So what ends up happening is he loses his bodily health. He is inflicted with boils from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. Can you all imagine that? That was pretty painful. And so that sends him into this downward spiral of questioning God. And then come along his three friends who try to help him, but all they do is make things worse. Anybody been there? Where the friends want to step in and counsel, where the family member I told you he wasn't worth it for you. This is why he's divorcing you, right? All the voices that come in, these are the voices in our head metaphysically that are sort of the challenge. They're the lower vibration that is bringing an energy that is not helpful for transformation. This is what they represent. Unhelpful advice, the blaming, the shaming, those kinds of things. And so Job is upset because he's like, wait a minute. I'm a good man. I'm pious. I do all of these things. Why? And he's angry at God. He's vengeful. He wants to think, why is God so vengeful? But the thing that we learn through this story is maybe there was some chinks in the spiritual armor of Job. We learn later that maybe there was some fear consciousness. Maybe there was some lack consciousness. Maybe there was some things in there that opened up to this situation. And there was more. Eric Butterworth, who is one of the most well-known ministers in Unity, he passed away in the early 2000s, but he had a ministry for 4 decades in New York City with thousands of people, wrote an inordinate amount of books. I can't even count them. But he did a sermon one time, or a talk, called Why Doesn't God? And the question he's trying to explore in this is, why does God allow evil or suffering? Because that's what a lot of people ask him. And what he goes underneath into that question, for all of us to do that as well, he says we have the wrong interpretation of God. This is part of the issue that we can't get into this conversation. This is what he says. Actually, the mere question, why doesn't God do something about this or that, evidences a complete lack of understanding of the nature of being. God's will is not a capricious and arbitrary determination, not something that God decides to do or some inscrutable reason of his own. On the contrary, the will of God is the ceaseless longing of the Creator seeking to perfect that which He's created. A ceaseless longing. It's part of the natural flow. So what He's encouraging us and pushing the envelope on is to say, sometimes pain shows up in our life to be able to build us up. Sometimes it comes into our life to be able to open us further, open our heart to feeling, open ourselves to the Spirit, open ourselves to each other. If we stay stuck just in the pain as a victim, we're losing the blessing that we can get from this tumultuous time. He goes on to say that the important thing to ask is, are we looking at God through our troubles, or are we looking at our troubles through God? So he says the first one is, if you look at God through your troubles, then you're saying again, why did this happen to me? Why are you not jumping in here? You're omniscient, you're omnipresent. So where are you, God, in this? Fix this now. I need this. And then we think God is arbitrary and angry and maybe we're not even deserving when we see it through that lens. But if we flip it around, he says, and if we look at our troubles through God, we see a different thing. This is what Reverend Eric Butterworth says. If you look at your troubles through God, it's to begin with the basic premise: God is the ground of your being. Realizing that God the good is all-present, omnipresent, all-knowing. Remember that Jesus says in the Beatitudes, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." In the purity of consciousness, you see God because you see from the awareness of God. You protect and project that awareness, that energy, and it becomes a force in your life. So if we see that God is good, if we see that God is not involved, it's an energy, it's an essence, it's not a he, him, they, she. It is an essence that we all are a part of, that we channel, that we are. If we see it from a different vantage point, it doesn't have arbitrary feelings, it just is. And so the things that happen into our lives happen not as a consequence of God, but a consequence of just our life, our journey, our spiritual journey that we're taking here. It's not always fun and easy, but we have to take God out of that equation as the creator of that pain. And that's what ends up happening in Job, is that he understands that it's not God, that he too can change. And so he moves into a new understanding of his pain. And then at the end of the story, his life is restored. His wealth is restored. Everything is restored to his life because he's looking inward. He's not looking outward. So I ask you here today, how are you all seeing your troubles? How are you seeing God? Are you seeing God through your troubles or your troubles through God? And I invite you to take a look at your life. The things that you consider, the problems that you're facing, how are you looking at them? Are you saying, why isn't God changing this for me? Like, I've been praying, I've been meditating, I've been doing the Course in Miracles, why isn't this changing? We have to see it from the consciousness of God's good, God's omnipotence. Understanding the situation is important for us to open up that pain, deal with that pain, make that pain our friend, move through that pain. There's various iterations of how this all goes. And with that, I'll ask you, is there resistance in your story? Are you not accepting what is right now? Because many of us go there, right? When we have an illness, for example, and we're just angry. Our bodies can't do what it was doing before. Why is this happening to me? And we resist it, and we're trying to go against it. And part of that is the letting go of just allowing it and understanding it and being one with it, if you will, being friends with it even, and saying, what is this here to teach me? We move out of that victim story, move out of feeling sorry for ourselves to transformation. And I'm going to give y'all a little thing that came to me this morning. It's called POT, Point of Transformation. And here's how I'll explain it to you. My wife and I love to garden, and we've planted different things, some of which have died, honestly, and most of which have not. But one of the things that we did this spring was to plant sweetgrass. And I read the book, Braiding Sweetgrass, and I was really inspired. And I said, I'm going to do my own sweetgrass. And so part of that is sometimes you have seeds, right? And you put them in the pot, and then they grow. And then what happens? They become big, and you have to take them out, the plant, and then you have to put it in a bigger pot. And then it goes into its evolution, its growth, and then what happens? You have to take it out. And part of us in this journey is like that. We're constantly being replanted. We're constantly, when you see the leaves dying, or you see maybe the plant about to die, or you see changes, or part of the plant dies, and you have to save that other part that isn't. It sounds kind of like a funny example, but I see it that way, is that we're constantly elevating, we're constantly moving in this spiritual journey, and we're always at a point of transformation. When we understand that, when we embrace that, then we embrace our power. Because we're not here to be broken. We're here to be broken open. We're here to be transformed and connected, to be in right relationship to ourselves, to each other, and to God. I want to share with you, as I move to close, a story. I had an online congregant contact me maybe about a month ago, and I was blown away with their share. They shared with me that they had recently just started coming to Unity of Nashville via online, nowhere near Tennessee, and that they were going through a very hard time in their life. They had lost their relationship and were very pained by the circumstances in which they lost that relationship. They were drinking heavily. They were on a very big downward spiral, and they had a gun. And one night, the pain got so bad, they pulled out that gun and they loaded it with the intention to use it either on themselves or the person that they thought was creating this pain. And so they got up with the gun loaded, ready to use it, and they looked up at a sign that was close to their door that said, "Be thankful every day." And it was that click in that instant that changed their lives. It changed how they understood what was happening. And they shared with me the beauty and the grace and the joy of being part of this community, of having been given at least some rudimentary tools from just being here for a little while to deal with the situation. And what they shared with me was in that moment when they saw that be thankful, it switched from the God out there to the God within that said, step into your power. You are the co-creator. You are here to do a great and mighty work. And it changed. They shared with me that God saved their life. But what they really said was that God within, as the channel of good, saved their life. And so they shared that they are now in a 12-step program. They've been sober. And they claim gratitude every morning before they even step out of bed, and that they pray every morning. This is a real story. But it's a reminder that we are not here to be broken or broken open, but we're here again to be transformed and connected. Sometimes that pain is overwhelming, but I remind you all, we are being forged in the fire at times. We are being created anew. We are being able to meld that metal that is us to be able to make something new and beautiful and bold. It is a fire of truth that we are in, which is about getting into the full recognition and the right connection to God. So I close by asking you all, where is God in your pain? And the way I answer this is, God is in everyone and in everything. That person who had that gun ready to use it, we all became part of that God moment. The community that we create here every Sunday here together. This morning I saw the sunrise, the red sunrise. Did anyone see that? Tennessee has the best sunrises in the world. God is there. The prayer chaplains that are here, a stranger's smile. Beautiful people, we are not alone. It's not just about our ancestors or different kinds of things people believe in, like angels and saints or whatever. I'm not discounting any of that. I believe all of that is there too, my personal belief. But God shows up as us every day. And so I encourage you as I close, if you're going through pain right now, seek support. We are not meant to go through this alone. You have a community. You have many things, even online now, 12-step fellowships. And remember that God is doing a mighty work in you. We need each and every person to be able to move through their pain so that they can move into their passion, to move into their power, to move into their possibility, and to move into the vision that God has for you as a creator of the divine. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen.